All right. Wait, did I go live? I don't know if I just went live. It says that I'm live, so let's see if it works. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS Office Hours. I am live. Okay, that's interesting. So it used to be that I could start my streaming software and then I would have to click a button on YouTube to actually start the stream, but now for some reason, when I start the streaming software, then it just goes live right away. Um, I don't know if that's a good thing, but it is what it is. Anyways, welcome back. So this is SerenityOS Office Hours. What we do here every week is that we talk about SerenityOS, about programming and adjacent projects. Basically, chat decides what we talk about. So any questions that you bring up, we will dig into them. It can be about SerenityOS. It can be about the Yucked programming language. And recently also the Ladybird browser project that I started doing for other operating systems. And nice to see a bunch of people here already. Hello, LLLL, Abhishek, Draxel, Adler, and Checha. Adler, I saw your work on the is operator looking pretty cool. Very excited about that feature. Let's see. Good morning, JJ. All right. I still need to figure out what to do with the chat window when I have the green screen. But this seems good enough for now. So let's make sure we have a build of Serenity so that we can actually test stuff. Okay. So I guess the main news item while we're waiting for people with questions is that yesterday we got rid of the Rust-based compiler for Yucked. So the Yucked compiler is now the only Yucked compiler, like the self-hosted Yucked compiler. And that's pretty sweet. And the last missing piece that we had to get working was getting the IDE extension that we use for auto completions and type hints and stuff like that. We had to get that working with the self-hosted compiler. And now that that is working, we no longer needed the Rust version. And of course, now I'm not seeing any hints here, so maybe I messed something up. Let's go ahead and make sure that that's correctly configured. I think, yeah, that was probably the issue. All right, let's see. So German WTB says, a bit of a tangential question. The store that sells the Serenity stickers is quite expensive and takes a large cut of that, as I understand it. What do you think about people printing their own? I am perfectly fine with anybody printing their own stickers, you know, or making any kind of Serenity themed thing. I would not have any trouble with that. In fact, I would be super excited to see anything that you would come up with. I think I'm definitely not looking to like make big money off of those things. I'm more looking to just provide a convenient service where people can get these things. But if you find them too expensive, then absolutely make your own. It's true that they take quite a bit of cash for the service that they provide, but it is also very convenient. Hello, Joseph. So, oh wow, now YouTube is saying this thing again. Now would be a good time to insert ads. I'll show you what that looks like. It's like this. Now would be a good time to insert ads. It's very annoying. Why would I want to do that? Okay, so Adler says, contributing to Yucked has been so much fun. As a hobbyist programmer, actually doing useful stuff is so rewarding. I totally love that. You feel that way. I think it's such a great feeling to work on software that gets used by other people and you can actually see other people use it and sort of get the delight of seeing your improvements and stuff. If you're sitting at some company and you make software for people that you never meet, you never hear from, it can be, I don't know, it can be like pretty abstract, right? And you get disconnected from your end user. So working on Serenity and Yucked and other open source projects where everybody is sort of working towards a common goal and we're all users of the software, it's just like this feedback loop of good vibes, I think. Like we get excited when somebody else makes something cool because now we can use that and so on. And I'm glad to have you here. So JJ says, hoping to get Yucked Windows friendly too. Yes, so it is already technically pretty Windows friendly, although I think now that we got rid of the Rust compiler, we probably need to do some touch-ups. So JT started working on Yucked on Windows originally, so we had sort of Windows support since day one, but you know, it is the less convenient of the three major platforms to support when you're doing any kind of cross-platform POSIX stuff like we're doing. Kyle, well, hello, Kyle, says, YouTube did not notify me when you went live like I asked. I'm sorry about that. Maybe, you know, maybe if I would click that insert ad button more often, maybe YouTube would send out notifications or something. I don't know. I also have the same experience with YouTube, that I ask to be notified about many things and I feel like I don't really get notified, which is not ideal, but what are you gonna do? So I'm noticing here that I'm still not seeing any actual hints, so let's see if we can fix that right quick. So, well, let's just go ahead. Oh, I don't have the compiler. I thought I had it, but why is this so difficult? Let's build an optimized version of the compiler. That takes a long time, by the way. The Yucked compiler itself is relatively fast, especially if you build a release version of it. But Clang and LLVM, they take like a minute to build the self-host compiler at this point on my machine, which is, you know, it's 2 years old, but it's not a slouch. So we definitely are going to have to invest some time into compile time performance for sure. See, Adler says, any YouTube videos building something with Yucked for SerenityOS on the horizon? On the horizon, for sure. Immediately, I don't know. There are a bunch of things I want to do with the language first, I guess, like a couple of more quality of life things and tighten up closures a little bit more and the references stuff. But I think eventually what I would like to do is see if we could do maybe like one of the system services in Yucked, or some library functionality. See if we can build something like that, like an image decoder or something like that. It would be very interesting, I think. In general, this was actually talked about on Discord earlier today. People were talking about how the sort of rewrite it in Yucked storm is coming, and I don't know if that's a terribly exciting storm for me personally. Like I don't want to just rewrite random tiny utilities just for the sake of it. But I know that some people probably will find that interesting. But it's important then that we actually learn something from that experience, right? So we want to use that type of work to find issues with the language and at the same time try to improve whatever we can about those programs. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, you know, there's only so much you can do with something very, very tiny utility, and I don't know. We need to find a way to extract value from those type of things. Anyway, Josh says, does Serenity need a torrent client? I don't really know how they work, but I would like to learn by building one. Well, let he who has never torrented anything cast the first stone, right? I think a torrent client would be a very good thing to have in life, and I would certainly use it myself. So if somebody doesn't build it, then I will. If you would like to learn how they work, there was actually, must have been a few years ago now, somebody started working on a torrent, at least a library for torrenting on Serenity, but that never actually landed into the tree. But you might find something interesting there, but you could also just start from scratch. I think it would be a great thing to have torrent support, absolutely. Let's see. Jeremy WTB says, speaking of image decoders, have you heard of JPEG XL? It's really cool. I have heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen a JPEG XL file in the wild, but I have heard of it. I've heard of it in the context of, like, I think it was like one of those things that gets turned off if you put your iOS device into lockdown mode, or maybe that was JPEG 2000. Anyways, I heard the name, but I don't think I've ever read the spec or seen what it's about. I assume it's JPEG extension of some type. Maybe we'll learn more about that. David says, hello, finally managed to catch a live stream. Hope you all are well. I hope you are all well too, everybody. And you too, David. Geoj says, any plans to have Ladybird render the DOM using OpenGL or Vulkan instead of the software graphics painter? There are no plans one way or the other. Here we just do things one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. But at the moment, there is no architectural work towards a more scene graph style renderer or anything like that. But it certainly could be done, but it's not being worked on. Oh, Adler, thank you very much for joining the Golden Yak herd. enjoy your Golden Yak emote. Let's see. Jack Delahunt says, when integrating Yucked with CBP, does the CBP data types automatically get added to the Yucked type checker, or do you have to redefine all those data types? So you kind of have to do the work again of redefining them. Yeah, now we got the hints here. Okay, so what we have currently is we have this file called the prelude. And the prelude is inserted at the top when we compile Yucked. And it basically describes a bunch of classes that exist in C++ code. And it just tells us how to call them from Yucked. So extern struct basically means that this is some external thing. Just trust me, bro, it exists. You can call it. Here's the function signatures in a Yucked format. And we have those for a couple of things. And if you want to call out to C++, this is basically what you'll have to do. Because Yucked is not going to have a C++ parser of any type. And it won't understand C++ natively. So you'll have to tell it in Yucked what those APIs look like. And then we will generate C++ from that to be able to call it. Let's see. Haha says, Andreas, do you feel pressure delivering visible code like during coding Yucked? Since joining GitHub sponsors, I've felt some pressure to deliver, but the fun is gone in working with fonts. Ooh, well, I'm very sorry to hear that. The fun is gone. I hope that will get better. I think it's like you have to get acclimated to the idea of people supporting you, and it takes a while. Like, it's kind of unsettling and scary at first, because I certainly had the experience that I felt like, oh my goodness, now I have to make, like, people are sponsoring me, now I have to make a video every day, and I have to make a new feature every day, and I have to push like 20 commits every day. And initially I had these sort of ideas would pop into my head, and I would worry about that. But over time, I started to relax a bit, and I think somebody told me at some point that, like, look, even if you make a video every day, nobody has time to watch that, Andreas. So you don't have to do that. And I don't remember who it was, but that helped me. Helped me get over the idea that I have to be like constantly making things, making visible things. So I definitely have felt more pressured, like visibly programming on video in the past, and that has relaxed a lot. But I still want to put out video content every week, and I want to do the streams, and I want to interact with people, because I feel like it gives me a lot of positive things in my life, just having a dialogue with everybody. And I think it's important for the project, for project direction, to see that, like, okay, so here's Andreas, and he's hard at work on stuff. I don't since I am always working on something, I like to make that somewhat visible, but not necessarily by sharing all of the video of it all the time. I don't know if that makes sense. And then, of course, sometimes I start to think, oh, well, now I'm not doing enough video content, and maybe I have to find a way to amp that up. I think maybe it's a balancing thing that you just have to learn to tune. I'm definitely still learning how to tune it, because there have been times when I did too much, times when I did too little. Now I'm starting to feel like I'm doing too little right now, so maybe it's time to tune again. Anyway, that's an interesting question. Like, I feel like it's kind of a low information space. Like, not a lot of people have experience with this type of job or whatever, so there aren't that many people to talk to or to learn from. So you kind of have to do a lot of experimentation on your own, which is scary. Definitely scary to me. But I think I'm getting more comfortable with that too. Let's see. Electric Milk. What's up, Brandon? Electric Milk says, thoughts on the Carbon language. I don't have any strong thoughts on the Carbon language one way or the other. I haven't spent time writing it, so I don't really have an opinion worth hearing, I think. But I am really happy that more languages are coming up. More people are trying to do systems languages, sort of post C++ systems languages. I think that's fantastic. And as JT was saying on Twitter the other day, there's room for more systems languages, and the more the merrier. Like, we need more languages to explore different trade-offs so that we can all benefit by languages learning from each other, stealing or borrowing from each other, right? So I think Carbon is a great thing in that way. And in the same sense, like, I'm happy that they're not making the same exact design decisions as we have made with Yucked, because it means that we get another language to observe and to learn from, and to take ideas from when some of them succeed. Yeah, so no spicy takes from me. I am just watching from afar, hoping that they succeed. Really, I hope everybody succeeds. I think, because that's when we all get the maximum benefit. If every new language that comes out, like Rust, like Zig, like Carbon, like Swift, like Yucked, like all of these new systems languages in the last 8 years or whatever, like, if they all succeed, then we all benefit greatly as programmers, because the space becomes more sophisticated and there are more options, you have more choice, and they all take stuff from each other. So these are great times to be a systems developer, I think, because in the last 10 years, there's just been this huge increase in investment from all kinds of angles into our tool chain. Let's see. Dex says, hello. I think you and Itamar already worked on C++ parser in Serenity. Any chance of that helping with Yucked? I mean, we do have a C++ parser, but I feel like trying to parse C++ in Yucked would just be a huge amount of complexity for quite little benefit. Unless somebody has some argument for why it would be super beneficial, I think like the main reason to do it would be so that we were able to call C++ APIs without having to sort of declare them like this. But this isn't really that much effort, I think. I suppose one thing you could do is you could auto-generate these using a separate tool. And for that, you could use our C++ parser. So like you could run the C++ parser over libgui, for example, and have it spit out Yucked declarations for all of the libgui classes. And then you could import those and you wouldn't have to do this by hand. That could be one thing. But having the C++ parser integrated in the Yucked compiler itself, I don't really see what we would get out of that. Subankar says, can we declare the variables in Yucked in such a way that it points to more than one reference pointers at a single point? Are you asking if it's possible to alias? It is currently possible to alias with references because we have not yet implemented aliasing analysis, but I know it's something that JT wanted to work on, or at least had some strong ideas about how we should do. But yeah, that's definitely something that we want to work on and have something not exactly like, but similar to the way Rust handles mutable and immutable borrows to prevent bugs in that way. Let's see, Jack says, I see no data members in the extern structs. Can you not access the internal public members of CPP structs? Just their members, or just their methods? Right, I don't think we can declare data members on extern structs right now. I'm not sure, but we could certainly support that. It will definitely be necessary if you want to like import a C header and then use some struct, you know, like if you were interfacing with some C library that has a struct or something like that. But it shouldn't be terribly difficult to do that, because in the end, we are still, like, when you declare an extern struct like this, we're still going to also include the real C++ header file. So whatever you say here will get more or less validated against the reality of the header file. Although it is still possible to lie a little bit in these. Like if you say that a parameter has a specific type, for example, but then in the C++ header, the parameter type is different, but is implicitly convertible to the type that you said, then we're not going to notice that. So it is possible for inconsistencies like that to slip through. And perhaps that is one area where auto-generating these using libcpp would be helpful. Adler says, what would be needed to get rid of the .iterator thing in Yucked? I'm guessing traits. Right, so the .iterator thing is when we loop over a container, we have to say .iterator, because that gives us something that we can actually iterate over. And traits would be one solution to that indeed. So you can have some kind of iterable trait, which then provides a known mechanism for acquiring an iterator over it. And then the compiler would just know about that trait, and for loops would desugar to getting an iterator automatically. But at the moment, we don't have traits, although I've seen at least 2 people working on traits at separate occasions, so it seems to be something that will happen. Let's see. Freeman says, hello, Andreas. Are there any plans of adding Serenity to the Google Summer of Code program? So at the moment, no. Perhaps in the future, although we talked about this, I don't remember when it was, almost a year ago maybe, and people had concerns that that the program itself is pretty mentoring heavy. So it's not just about getting Google to pay somebody to work on Serenity, but you also have to find somebody to mentor that person and to help move them along. And you know, it would require us to have a person as a mentor for anyone who gets into that as well. But maybe, I don't know. I would certainly be very happy to see students or anybody who's qualified get paid to work on Serenity over the summer, but the mentoring is an issue. And personally, I guess I'm also a little bit concerned about people working on Serenity for any other reason than they want to. People coming to work on it because they're going to get money if they do. I think that is a little bit offside from sort of the usual reason that people work on Serenity, and the whole spiritual reason that I work on Serenity as well. So it would be important to me that we would only like approve Summer of Code people who actually wanted to do the thing anyway, and this way they were just going to get paid, I guess. But yeah, that's a tricky thing to really measure, I guess. In the end, you would never really know one way or the other, but I would hope that we don't end up in a situation where somebody is just putting some code into the code base because they got paid and they didn't care one way or the other, and after they were finished they would just leave. That would be a bit sad. Let's see. Leonardo says, how about signals and slots like in Qt but baked in Yucked language? So I was never a big fan of signals and slots in Qt, and we don't use them in Serenity either, even though we do take a lot of inspiration from Qt. And Yucked, by design, just sort of takes all the existing Serenity patterns, or aims to take all the existing Serenity patterns and turn them into a language. So following that, it's unlikely that we would bake in signals and slots into the language because it's not part of our development style. Abhishek says, hey Andreas, did you have to ever work with Objective-C during your time at Apple? It feels drastically different from C or C++. I did have to do some Objective-C. Parts of WebKit and Safari are written in Objective-C, wherever they have to interact with AppKit or various macOS systems libraries that are Objective-C, then there is sort of corresponding code in WebKit that interfaces with those things. And it is a very strange language. Has a lot of strange little features. Some of them are kind of interesting. Some of them are such unique footguns, like auto release pools, for example, and like well-intentioned, but like ultimately footguns in many situations. And it's not a language that I would use voluntarily for anything new now, but it is, out of all the C family languages, Objective-C is definitely one of them. Thomas says, will Yucked have a standard or be versioned like C++, or will SerenityOS just use whatever features are available in the master branch? So I think it's definitely too early to call anything a standard, but I do think we will have some kind of versioning for using it with Serenity, because if you have a huge code base like Serenity depend on a compiler that's unstable, it would be really irritating if you get the latest source code from both of them, and then there's like something that's broken in Yucked, and now you can't build Serenity because the compiler is broken. So I think what we would do realistically is probably have something like like a rolling release of Yucked every so often, and Serenity would just bump to the latest version of Yucked whenever one is released. I don't know exactly the specifics of how that would work, but I would imagine something like that. Circus Bolgan says, "What is your hair routine?" Haha. Well, I tell you, my hair routine is that every couple of days I shave my head, and then I don't really think much more about it. Kushashwa says, "Hey Andreas, I'm trying to learn operating systems, kernels, and more. Is rewriting Serenity just to practice a good way to start?" Rewriting Serenity just to practice. I think that would be a very large task at this point. But I would encourage you to either build something small, like if you want to learn operating systems and kernels, building a small operating system will definitely help you a lot. It's easy enough that any intermediate programmer can pick it up and do it, make a basic kernel. And there's plenty of tutorials online if you just Google. If you want to learn more, I would encourage you to join an ongoing operating systems project like SerenityOS or any of the other ones, where you can participate in a larger community and work on stuff together to build sort of more sophisticated things than just the basics. But I think if you just want to learn about operating systems, making your own simple one is a kick-ass exercise that will teach you a lot, and you'll be very, it's a very satisfying feeling to build something that runs on your machine without external code. Joseph says, "Is the yield keyword in Yucked essentially serving the same purpose as how Rust uses final expressions without semicolons?" Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So in Yucked, let's see if we can. How do you make a new file here? Surely that's just a simple thing like that. Yeah. So if function foo, and how do I switch to language? Wait, how do I switch to language? Change language mode. Yucked. All right. So if you match on something, and we would say match on 3, then in Rust, you could put an expression here, right? Like 5. And then if I were 3, which it's not, but whatever, then J would become 5, because this is the final expression with no semicolon at the end of this block. And in Yucked, we decided to use a keyword for that because I have to say, I think the whole final expression without a semicolon in the block thing in Rust is probably the thing that I hit my toe on the most times in the time that I've been writing Rust. Like, that was consistently the thing that I just never got used to, and I just kept hitting my toe on it, and I don't understand why it has to be so strange. And putting in a keyword makes it like, okay, well, this block yields this result, and that's it. And now it's super clear what's going on. So I don't know. That's kind of what we came up with so far. Of course, Rust supports final expressions without semicolon in more context. Like, we don't have if expressions in Yucked yet, for example, so you can't just do something like this. Does not work yet. but it's something that we keep discussing about. Maybe we should do something like that. But then there's also the concern about, like, what do you do when you have nesting stuff? So like, what if there's a match in here, you know, and then where does the yield keyword yield you to? So there are a couple of different approaches, but nothing has solidified yet as the obvious solution we should do. Let's see, Cyber Jesus. That is a cool name. Cyber Jesus says, nope, data members are ignored. Already tried with Yucked test. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Adler says, I'd love to see JT, Linus, and the others of the crew as invited guests here again. Yes, I would love that too. I do need to invite people on again. I just need to actually invite somebody. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that for sure. Let's see. Jeje says, to be clear, I've had a lot of fun working on SerenityOS related projects like websites and learning the Ladybird codebase. It just doesn't show up in the Serenity repo commit count, that being visible code. Oh, I see. Oh, so you're talking about like how you feel pressured to like make visible commits that people can see on your GitHub profile or whatever. Yeah, I've definitely felt that pressure myself. To, you know, just produce something that is numerically visible on GitHub. But I think you'll find over time that that people still support you, even if your numbers fluctuate, because when somebody signs up to support you, then and you know, speaking as somebody who's signed up to support you on GitHub sponsors, I think it's because I like what you do in general, and I'm not there like monitoring how many commits you do every day. I just I've seen your work. I really like what you do, and I hope that you can continue with it. So let's see. Yeah, like right here. So I haven't been to this profile since I signed up, but I still stay on, of course, because as you say, you would like to spend more time helping out with SerenityOS. So if anybody wants to check out Jeje's profile, definitely check that out. Let's see. So Mitchell says, now that Yukt is self-hosted, does that mean the compiler just exists as a binary? If every copy were to have been deleted, it would be gone forever. Well, no, actually. It exists as a CPP file. So our compiler transpiles from Yukt to C++. That's how we get perfect interoperability with C++. And we don't have to save a binary. If we had to save a binary, that would be kind of a hassle, because then we would need to have a binary for, you know, for Linux, for Mac OS, for Windows, for Serenity, for whatever. But because we transpiled to C++, we can just save the transpiled C++ source code, and you can use this together with a copy of the runtime to rebuild the compiler on any platform. So it is very convenient in that way, actually. Kushashwa says, why is self-hosting a language important? Does it have any benefits over using any other language? So it's not necessary, but I personally think it's important to self-host a language, because it proves to us, we prove to ourselves that the language is capable enough and pleasant enough that we would want to write the compiler in itself. I think, you know, if we were to keep writing the compiler in Rust, at least I would feel like, okay, well, this is just our little toy that we use like a serious language to implement. But instead, we take off the training wheels, and we just decide, well, we're just gonna become self-sufficient, and and like make sure that the language is strong enough and nice enough that we all want to work on it in itself. And it was a little bit of a rough ride at first because the language was pretty clunky, of course, originally, but then over time it has gotten pretty okay. And now that we don't have the two compilers anymore, it's much easier to do new features. So now it's going to improve quite a bit again. But it's strictly not necessary to self-host. It's just, in my view, it's just something that helps us take the language more seriously and helps us learn more about it and find ways to improve it and so on. James says, how did you balance working full-time and Serenity? I struggle to find any free time after work without sacrificing the limited time I get with my family. So it's definitely a tough thing. And I think in my case, like I mostly put all of my free time into working on Serenity when I had a separate full-time job. And that's not a trade-off that everybody would want to make. But it's one that I decided to make because it was the right thing for me. And ultimately, I think if you have a family and you want to spend a certain amount of time with them, of course you should do that, you know? But I'm pretty much sure that everybody has time available that they currently put into nonsense. I know that I do. I think everybody does, or extremely few people in this world don't dump time into nonsense daily that they could sort of reallocate to more productive things. And nonsense is a different thing for everybody, of course. But like in my case, in the past, I would watch TV shows and things like that, or just waste time on unproductive websites. And if you feel like you don't have time for things that you really want to do, that's where I would start looking. Just look at where are you spending time on complete nonsense that you could reallocate if you actually wanted to. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Jeja says, Andreas, what would you like to see improved in Ladybird? Any wish list? I guess, what would I like to see? I would like to see the web engine improved, ultimately. Like, that's my main desire with Ladybird, was just to give people a way to run the browser engine on Linux and give myself a way to do that, so that lower the barrier for working on libjs and libweb and all of the supporting libraries. In the browser shell itself, I mean, I would definitely like to have better debugging capabilities. So like at the very least feature parity with the debugging capabilities we have on Serenity, where you have, the DOM inspector, CSS property inspector, box model inspector data, stuff like that. And better JavaScript console, like better debugging tools would be my number one desire, I guess. Yeah, because at least the way at the quality level of libweb right now, it's not really at the point where I'm going to be using the browser for more than a couple of minutes at a time to debug some issue. So until it gets better at displaying and handling websites, I think of it as mainly a debugging tool. So that's where I would like to see improvements personally. But just because that's what I would like to see doesn't mean that that's what we have to do. Like, of course, we can also add quality of life features for simply using it, like how somebody added tabs to it early on, by the way, or for example, like that was not a debugging feature, but it's still clearly a neat thing. Let's see. Inalone says, I like Rust, but the last expression without semicolon felt horribly non-expressive to me and made code harder to read at a glance. Yes, I agree with that. And I even heard somebody who works a lot with Rust say that they also found that very hard to get used to. Ananta says, I hope Yukt supports bare metal so we can make an operating system based on Yukt. Well, technically, it will just compile to C++, and then as long as you can compile that C++ for bare metal, you should be able to do anything you want with it. It is a goal of mine to eventually be able to use Yukt in the Serenity kernel, but it's not the first area of focus, I guess. So the libraries, like user space libraries, applications are gonna come first, because I think it will be a lot easier to figure out what we need for the language and learn more about it, discover patterns and so on. And then once we have a more mature language and a more mature understanding of it, then we can try to bring it to a lower level and use it in the kernel as well. But we'll see. Just because that's my goal doesn't mean that somebody won't try to do kernel stuff with it tomorrow. But personally, I think I would prefer to explore user space first. Let's see. Venkatesh says, hi Andreas, bruh. What is your thoughts on design patterns? Does Serenity use design patterns? I saw you talking about singleton pattern in office hours. We definitely use some design patterns in Serenity. I think like design patterns or patterns in general are valuable, but just because something is a pattern does not mean that it is valuable. There are valuable patterns and silly patterns that add more overhead or just cognitive burden than they add value. So I think you have to evaluate every instantiation of a pattern. You have to evaluate like, okay, well, does this actually add value here? Or am I just making it more complicated for the sake of using a pattern? Let's see. Network exception says, are you concerned about the Bootstrap CPP file growing the Git repo size a lot? Not terribly concerned, I guess. But I guess it's an option to compress it. But I'm not super worried about that. Let's see. If it becomes a concern, I guess we should talk about that. I don't know if Git actually I imagine that Git compresses this stuff, but I guess maybe it doesn't. Does Git compress text files? Does Git compress text files? Git is optimized for storing text data. Compressing it beforehand will likely make it use more space instead of less. Well, thank you, Redditor from 2015. I'm gonna go ahead and that sounds very believable to me. So it seems like, assuming that they do some sort of reasonably clever text-friendly compression, I'm not sure that any other strat would help us much. Of course, you could put them outside of the repo, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on that and see how it develops. So, I don't know how to pronounce that. How do you pronounce that? Delta? Dleer? I don't know. Well, I'm going to call you Dleer. So Dleer says, so Jack transpiles to C++. let's say you're working on a project that have a dozen Jacked files. Will it transpile to the same amount of C++ files or just one giant CPP file? So at the moment, it will transpile to a single file, and that is a source of great slowness right now. So it's something that we want to improve, but that will take some work. But we should do that work. So right now we make a single file, but it's very, very bad for compile performance, especially for incremental builds where you just change something small. We still rebuild everything at great time cost. CyberJesus says, self-hosting gives us a pretty good use case for the language as well, so we can see what we can polish up. Absolutely, yes. That's absolutely true. The more, I mean, the single largest concentration of Yucked source code right now is the compiler, and that's where that's sort of the playground where we're learning all the patterns and discovering the language. And that's an interesting process in itself, I think, like how we sort of figure out how to use the match keyword and how to chain them. So you do like match and yield match and stuff like that. It is interesting to watch that unfold, but you know, it's going to spread out into more things eventually. But at the moment, the Yucked compiler is the single biggest concentration of Yucked source code. So that's where we're learning how the language needs to work. Smelly J says, will Yucked get better errors than just runtime error code 2? No, I think that's as Nico says here, that's the best possible error. So I can't see why we would ever want to have a better error than that. More seriously, yes, of course it will. We are not going to have silly, ununderstandable errors. Eventually, we will decorate the error with more information and provide it to you so that you can learn, for example, in this case, which file was not available. Let's see, German WTB says, do you know anything about HDLs like Verilog and VHDL? It would be interesting to see if there could be a Yucked subset HDL in the future. So I don't know anything about hardware languages, much like I don't really know anything about hardware. I just skipped past all that and got directly into software as deep as I could. And I have a very, very limited and naive understanding of hardware. Sometimes I start thinking, hey, I should learn more about that. And then I get distracted by software because it's so interesting and so much fun. So one of these days, you know, I've been meaning to do some little project with hardware just to enlighten myself a little bit so I can feel like I have a little bit more of a clue. But talk is cheap, you know, and I'm not doing it, so shame on me for just talking to make myself feel good about that. Let's see, I'll let you know when I actually take action. JCS says, hello, Cyber Pals. Hello to you too, Cyber JCS. Very nice to see you here. Very nice to have Nico, like getting ahead of my thoughts every time. Cyber JCS. Thomas says, the danger with self-hosting is that you risk creating a language that's only optimized for making compilers. Yes, that is absolutely true. I can totally see that. In our case, we are such a large project with so much more than just a compiler, right? Like we have the project that we want to use the compiler for, but we just need the language to grow up a little bit, and I think for that reason it's going to be fine. Electric Milk says, is the plan to eventually compile Yucked into machine code? Well, there's the P word. There is no plan, Brandon, but at the moment. Compiling to C++ allows us to share code between Yucked and C++ somewhat seamlessly in theory. Once we get to the point, if we ever do, where there is no more C++ code in Serenity, then at that point, converting to C++ is pure overhead, right? And then we could look into native code generation at that point. But until we get there, at least for any code that needs to interface with C++ at a source level, we need that that interop power of transpilation. But I suppose if you had a module that was completely self-contained and you did not need to use any C++ stuff, then having some kind of native code generation stuff could be useful. It's not something that I'm going to work on anytime soon, but it's something that I imagine we will care about in a few years. Let's say, if the whole thing keeps going for that long. Let's see. Marco says, hello, Andreas. Been writing little programs on Yucked, and it's lots of fun. Well done. By the way, what is the editor theme you're currently using? Let's find out. Theme. It is Community Material Theme Darker. That's the one. I got it off of the automatic theme installation that's part of VS Code. Let's see. Cyber Ranger says, what do you think about tests? I think tests are fantastic. We have been using tests to drive the development of the Yucked compiler. And I forget how many tests we're up to now, but it's something like... Wait, how do you run Yucked tests now? I think we have something like 360 tests or something for Yucked so far. And we just keep adding them. And let's see if they all pass. Hopefully this doesn't mess up my stream. I think tests are great. They help us ensure that we don't regress, and they help us verify that we're actually implementing what we think we're implementing. So all around good stuff. I think some people overemphasize the value of tests sometimes, or some development cultures overemphasize the value of tests, and they believe that everything has to be driven by tests rather than being driven by what it is that you're actually trying to do and then using tests as a tool. In general, I think like methodological tools, is that a word? Any kind of methodology tools like tests, like unit tests, like integration tests, CI, stuff like that. They all need to be in service of the high level thing that you're trying to achieve, right? And I don't want to organize development or my own work around something at the micro level like unit testing. That's not to say I have a problem with somebody working that way, but to me that always just seems myopic, I guess, or nearsighted. I would rather think about stuff at a high level and then use these things as tools. Adler says, what is the process for introducing language features in order to use them in the self-host compiler? Updating stage 0 as part of the commit. So I guess the tidiest thing I would say is if you do it in multiple steps, right? So if you want to you introduce a new language feature, and then you want to use that feature in the self-host compiler, then I would say introduce the feature first, and then in a separate commit, use it in the self-host compiler. And then when you're using it in the self-host compiler, then you also update the stage 0 artifact. Because I think it would get pretty messy if you make like a breaking change to the language and then you update the self-hosted compiler or the stage 0 artifact in the same commit. That would just be messy. So let's try to do that in separate commits. Cafe asks, what is your favorite food? My favorite food is, well, I'm going to say cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is probably my favorite food because I eat that several times a day with basically every meal, and it's just fantastic. Has great macros, neutral taste. Just been eating it my whole life. Ashish says, hi Andreas, hope you're doing well. I am doing well. Hope you're doing well too, Ashish. Here is the literal definition of bruh. Says, opinions on tray icons and desktop icons. I guess, looking at my own tray right now, there's a whole bunch of icons here, but I guess I don't mind them. And in Serenity, we also have some icons, and I don't mind them at all. I guess I think that they're nice. I don't have strong feelings about desktop icons and tray icons, other than, I guess my main strong feeling I have about tray icons is that I would like to be able to opt out of any of them. So, for example, this power icon that I have down here in my Ubuntu Mate install, I can't get rid of it because for whatever reason, my Bluetooth mouse emits power information, and then Ubuntu just decides that has to have an icon in the tray on my desktop computer. And I'm sure there's a way somehow to get rid of it, but like just unchecking the always show icon in tray does not remove the icon. So I feel like with Serenity, if you say that you don't want these things, I feel like we should give you a way to not see them. At the moment, that is not something that we do well. It's something that I think we could do better. In general, we don't have UI to configure sort of how your tray is set up. I think that's something we should do better. I sometimes find myself right-clicking on the taskbar, expecting it to have a menu where settings is one of the things, and then I could go in there and make decisions about what's actually down here. And it's probably something that I'm going to add sooner or later, unless somebody else does. And about desktop icons, I don't know. To me, it's very natural to be able to just drop stuff off on the desktop. And the desktop that you see here on my Ubuntu machine is kind of it's a little bit of a lie. And because whenever I'm about to stream or record a video, I always clear my desktop, but often it has a bunch of random stuff on it that I've been working with. So I like to use the desktop as sort of a temporary staging area for random stuff. Let's see. Bachachachachal says, what do you think about C++ package managers like Conan, VCPKG, etc.? And sorry if this has been discussed before, but will Yukt provide some kind of package manager? So I don't have an opinion about C++ package managers because I don't use them, never have. And if I did, I probably would have some opinion, but I haven't, so can't really say much there. But I will say that Yukt probably will not provide a package manager, at least not anytime soon, because we don't need one. We don't have a package manager for Serenity either, because we build everything ourselves in-house. And Yukt, the primary use case for Yukt is to serve the Serenity operating system, and where we have everything in-house. So it's going to support sort of that development model initially. But we'll see. I think, after working a bit with Rust, it seems to me that having this sort of aggressively distributed packaging model like they do is not necessarily a great thing for users or for complexity, because you see like these tiny little Rust applications that are a couple of hundred lines or whatever, and they're deceptively small, because when you actually try to build them, it turns out that they pull down like tons of libraries that in turn have secondary dependencies and so on. And I don't know, that seems like I'm not sure that I'm sold on that development model of pulling in external dependencies like that from a package manager. I like to have more control over the dependencies, I guess. But all of that is moot, because in Serenity we control all the dependencies, and that is the use case that I'm concerned with for the moment. Also, I just want to call out that YouTube is once again saying that it would be a great time to insert some ads. Oh man, just let it go, YouTube. I'm not clicking it. Let's see. Ooh, Cat Monstret says, towards a package of queso. Thank you. I have like 5 packages of queso in my fridge right now, of this product right here, Swedish cottage cheese. Fantastic product. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I'm definitely gonna buy queso with the 20. Gonna do that right after the stream. Let's see. Tobias says, well, hello, Kling. Well, hello, Tobias. Good to see you here. Let's see. Joseph says, the other day you tweeted about document.all. Have you come across anything more cursed than that in your time reading and implementing web specs? Document.all is pretty special. Definitely agree with that. The other day I was also, it's not like cursed in the same way, but I was sort of frustrated by a discovery that I made. I guess I can just illustrate it by making an HTML file. So it's about percentages and percentage heights. So what the heck was the issue? So if you have a percentage height on an element, or on some kind of element that the percentage is supposed to be relative to the parent, to the containing block, but the containing block does not have an explicit height set. So let's say we have a container, and then we have an item inside of it, and then the item's height is 50%, and maybe the background is red, and maybe the container has a border or something, I don't know. Solid black. And then, div, something like that. Then the thing here is so strange to me, because if we look at this container, then we'll see that it has a height of 322 pixels. So you see the outline of it, the border, right? And the item has a height of 50%, but it's clearly filling up the entire thing. And that took me a lot of actually reading the specs to understand why it doesn't fill up only half of this thing. Like, why is it half of the screen? And it turns out that there are all these rules about what happens if you have a percentage-based size inside of a container that has automatic size in the same axis. And then you have to follow these rules where I think basically the container is like laid out as if it had... so you start by laying out the container as if it has automatic height. So then it becomes the size of the viewport, and then the inner item here is 50% of that, and then you figure out the real height of the container based on the size of the item. And it's called something like cyclic percentage size. I don't know. I'm not explaining it super well because I'm just trying to remember it at the same time. Cyclic percentage size, yeah. Cyclic percentage size. That was the name. Yeah. This whole thing, intrinsic contributions of percentage size boxes. It's such a whole thing that we don't do properly in libweb, that I don't fully understand yet how it needs to work. And there are so many things in CSS where you take a page and you open it in Firefox or Chrome or Safari or whatever, and everything looks fine, and then you open it in libweb and it looks wrong, and now you have to explain why. And it's harder it's harder than you think sometimes to explain why Firefox is right about something. Anyways, that's just something that was fresh in my mind. It's not nearly as cursed as document.ol. Tangent here, but let's get back on track. So Samuel says, do you think GUI testing would improve UX in Serenity? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think it might improve quality by not regressing the GUI, but I don't know if it would improve the user experience. I think directed effort towards improving UX would improve UX. I don't know. It depends on what kind of testing you mean, I guess. Surreal Egg says, I'm currently working on a mini Yucked compiler that compiles to machine code. I haven't decided which backend I should use yet, but hopefully I can share progress in the future. Yeah, there you go. So just because I don't want to do something right now doesn't mean that somebody else won't. That's the magic and the beauty of open source, that the code, everything is just out there and anybody can pick it up and go in any direction to explore, and that's just awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with that, Surreal Egg. Let's see. Cyber Jesus says, seeing Yukt tests running makes me smile. It would be nice to cut off paths so they don't get too long, but there's a greater issue right now regarding usability in different operating systems. Indeed, indeed. Anjeja says it's a well-known fact that Andrea's favorite food is anything with pineapples. Is that a well-known fact? I was not aware of that. Facebook says, I thought you changed your name. Facebook says, will you add some features like executing PE files? So I guess the question is, are we going to support executing Windows executables natively on SerenityOS? And I think the answer to that is no. Seems unlikely that we would do something like that. Kevin says, congratulations on self-hosting. Does Yukt have reflection/introspection capabilities? It would be nice to not have to write macro hacks to convert types to string literals like in C++. So it's definitely something that we are going to support, because it is indeed one of the big pain points in C++, is that there's just very little static reflection and you end up having to do a bunch of silly stuff. We don't have static reflection yet, but it is definitely an area that we want to do. So what we do have right now is something like, we do have pretty printers built in for any complex type. So if you were to declare a struct that has, you know, some fields or whatever, and we make one of those, then you can actually print that, and you don't have to write your own pretty printer. Let's call that foo. And where did I put that? Let's put that here. So it prints out for you in this nice format. I think it's a nice format. And you know, in Rust you would have to do one of those, damn it, what is it, derive, debug, or whatever. Here, you don't need to do that. We'll just make it for you. And that has been immensely helpful while working on the compiler. The one downside, I suppose, is that it adds a little bit of compile time overhead. So that's something that we need to improve, but I think it is neat. But we do want to have more static reflection, yes. Ooh, Nico sending a sweaty emoji super chat. Thank you very much. Let's see. German WTB says, have you ever come across JetBrains MPS? And what are your gut feelings on the sometimes more visual programming languages it enables? I have not come across that. What is JetBrains MPS? The domain-specific language creator. I have not looked at that at all. I need to familiarize myself with something new. I don't know. Like, whenever I look at non-text programming languages, I always just feel like it's kind of alien and it looks cumbersome. And I always imagine that you would have to use the mouse a lot more, and I feel like I want to use the keyboard. But at the same time, I very much believe that you spend way more time reading code than you do writing it. So it would be logical that it's kind of irrelevant if you have to use the mouse a little bit while writing the code. If it is much more efficient somehow or much more expressive. So I am curious about it, but I don't have any experience looking into it, so I can't really say anything sophisticated about it. Radiant Mango says, well, hello friends. When programming, do you visualize code and how it fits together, or is it just an abstract thought? I think it's just an abstract thought. I'm not great at visualization, like internally. So I do have almost like text-based thoughts, oftentimes, or just abstract thoughts. Like one of the hardest things for me is dealing with geometry and like doing arithmetic on offsets between geometric shapes and things like that. I find it excruciatingly difficult to do in my head because I struggle to visualize the shapes. So I often have to sort of draw them out on paper just so I can see, like, oh, this point is here and that point is there. So the difference is, I have to subtract this from that or whatever. But yeah, I guess I would say it's more abstract than visual. Thomas Q says, wouldn't rebasing and deleting the last Yucked CPP commit be a better idea? Yucked CPP could be something that the CI builds and commits and automatically deletes the last commit or something like that. So the issue is, I mean, there are some issues. I think ultimately it's nice if we don't force everybody to rebuild the compiler just because somebody commits something. It's also nice if it's nice if we can just have a stable compiler that lasts for more than one commit. And the Git history would get really messy if, like, after anything you do, then comes an automatic compiler update. And I think realistically, not every commit is going to be like a breaking change that would generate the compiler differently. Most commits are going to be like working towards fixing some specific thing that's not even an issue in the compiler. But when we do make those compiler breaking changes, then yeah, of course we have to update the compiler. But it is my intuition that it won't be necessary after every commit. But I don't know how often it will be. But we will start. We will experiment and see. We will learn from experience what happens. I don't know. Zhao says, I don't know if it's been answered before, but why is the self-host compiler for Yucked still called self-host in the GitHub repo? Any reasons not to rename it to SRC? So it's just called that because nobody changed it yet. We could definitely rename it to SRC, although seeing as how we have various things in this repository, like, there's the CMake and documentation, editor stuff, test stuff. It almost seems like maybe calling it compiler would be better than calling it SRC, because there's source code in many directories here. The compiler is just one part of the Yucked software distribution. Let's see. Gabriel says, hello, Andreas. Hello, Gabriel. Tobias says, I started dabbling a bit with Qt and it seems very familiar. Ooh, I wonder why. I think it's always funny to me when people who have worked on Serenity but never used Qt, and they go and pick up Qt and they realize, wait a minute, I see where Serenity gets its inspiration from. It is no secret that Qt is one of the big inspirations for our GUI libraries. Because I really like Qt, other than the signal slot stuff, perhaps. Damikiller37 says, well, hello, friends. Well, hello, Damikiller. Nice to see you. Let's see. Ooh, Stan with the super chat. Thank you so much. Saying, expressing my gratitude for your awesome work here on YouTube and SerenityOS/Yucked. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I don't know what BGN is, so I'm going to have to Google that. It's a Bulgarian lev. Cool. Thank you so much. I don't think I've ever had a Bulgarian currency in my possession before, so very, very cool. Thank you. Smelly J says, would it be better to remove the main function and make the entire file the main function like JavaScript? I think that would be strictly worse. Having a main function that is clearly what do you say? Like it's clearly like delineated or whatever, like it's separated as a single unit. I think that's much better than having an arbitrary flow of statements. Let's see. Smelly J says, are you excited for the new fleet editor from JetBrains? I haven't tried it out yet, so I don't know yet. Hashem says, does Yucked use recursive descent parsing? What grammar do you guys envision for it? Are BNF representations available? So we have a handwritten parser at the moment, and there is a PR somewhere with a grammar, although I keep postponing looking at it. But it's an LL1 grammar. And maybe that's something that we should look at and like integrate and formalize, because it is good to have a formal description. But it's at the moment it's all just kind of hand-rolled recursive parser. Ooh, Anderson with the super chat. So many super chat. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Anderson, who says, love to watch your videos, man. Keep up. All right, I will keep up. Is that a Brazilian real? Brazilian real? Is that what you call them? Real? No, that's not it. Our dollar. The Brazilian real. Yes. I do have some of those actually in my possession. Now I have 10 more. Thank you so much. I am very thankful for the super chats. I always get like a little bit flustered, or I get a little confused whenever somebody sends something like that, but because I really appreciate it. So thank you. Let's see. Yuval says, how do you not get demotivated when working on parts you don't really enjoy working on? Well, I guess I try to look for a reason to enjoy it. So, for example, yesterday, I was fixing up the IDE extension for Yucked, which meant like just tracking down a bunch of bugs, and I didn't find it super exciting to work on, but I was just visualizing, if you want to call it that. I was just imagining once I can finish making the IDE extension work with the self-host compiler, we can get rid of the Rust-based compiler. So I was focusing on like what is the end goal like of this work. Even though the work that I'm doing is not super interesting, I try to find something that it enables, or something that some side effect of it that I do like, and that often helps me. But honestly, like if there's something that I don't really want to work on, I try to avoid doing it unless I really have to, because at least in Serenity, there's a million things that need to be done, and you can improve quality in like 100 different ways at any given time. So I try to look for things that are useful and interesting at the same time. But of course, when somebody else is giving you tasks and telling you what to do, that's not an option. So in those cases, what I was saying earlier about like looking for an angle that you like about it, right? What about this benefits me in some way? Like, will this make something I want to do later easier, or will this improve something else I care about in some indirect way? Yeah, but it is hard. It is hard to find joy in things that you don't enjoy, because you have to work for it. It's not automatic. Let's see. JJ says, how do you handle working on large projects like Serenity and Yacht while dealing with life events? Everyone says time management, but it's never easy to do with distractions. So I guess I just try to work as much as I can, and then deal with life almost like I almost treat my life as a secondary concern sometimes, and it's not always the best, but it is the trade-off that I'm making, where I put my primary focus in my life is to work on software projects and improve them and try to get better at programming, because it is what I like to do, and it helps me stay on a healthy mindset and a healthy course in life in general. And a result of that is I spend less time on other activities outside of the software projects, but it's a choice that I make. Maybe I won't always make that same choice. But as I was saying earlier, I still do think that virtually everybody wastes a lot of their time on nonsense every single day. And there's always something you can cut out if you want to make time for something else. If you look hard enough, you'll find it. Let's see. German WTB says, since you are very familiar with Qt, how does the new dynamic layout stuff compare to what they do? Well, I'm not super familiar with the Qt layout system, to be honest. I've only used it to do very basic stuff. So I'm not great at using their size hinting system and that stuff. But I think the capabilities are I wouldn't say equivalent, but like they're kind of similar. At least my understanding of the Qt capabilities. So I need to use our new dynamic layout system more. Like I haven't written Serenity GUI code for months. I've just been working on new language and random web rendering issues and stuff. It's been a hot minute since I did some GUI code. I'm sure that I will have feedback on the new dynamic layout system when I do. Maybe we should do that taskbar settings stuff to edit tray icon settings and stuff like that. That would be a good thing to do, actually. Let's see the spelling. Indeed. Let's see. Nuga says, what's your view on explicit capture declarations on Yucked lambdas? So I think for lambdas, let's say that you have something like this. So I think if you want to capture something, we want to make it explicit what you're capturing, but that doesn't mean that we have to specify everything that you're capturing. So you don't have to say it like, oh, I want to capture food by immutable reference like this. Like if you have a lot of things here, you know, a lot of different things. I don't want to force you to say like this, like IJ, whatever. We should have something like this, like C++ does, where it would just take everything that you actually use inside of the Lambda would get captured in this way. So it would be capture everything used in the same way. But I want to have the ability to specify explicit captures if you want to, because if you have a preference that maybe you want to capture foo by mutable reference, but the other things by value, so maybe just like that, then I think it's good if we have a way to do that. I don't really like in Rust that they force you to, or they don't allow you to do this in Rust. Like you have to use a very limited set of options. I think in C++ it is nice that they give you the tools to be specific about what you're doing. But in the common case, something like this, I feel like would be totally acceptable because it's what we already do in C++. And I think some people have suggested that, oh, it should just be implicit and everything should just like choose the right thing by default, and it could look like this, and then you could just use foo here and it would just figure out how everything should work. I don't like this option so much because I want to tell the compiler my intent, I guess. I don't want it to guess my intent because I don't know. I feel like this is a sufficiently complex issue that I would rather be specific about it, be explicit about it, than just have a default and expect everybody to expect the default to fit every situation. Also, we've talked about this in the context of references, but if you wanted to store a closure somewhere, then we couldn't let you store a closure that has anything captured by reference, for example, because it wouldn't be safe. So if you capture, if you capture foo here by reference, then this f closure that we're making, it's not going to be valid after this function exits. So imagine that it's something other than main. So by making it explicit, this allows us to say, oh, wait a minute, this is a capture by reference is not possible because it won't be valid. It won't be valid after you exit this function. So it would force you to capture it by value. And I don't know. My thoughts on this are like a little bit murky, but I think the cliff notes are that I think explicit is good, but explicit with shorthand. So this same as C++. So this meaning capture everything by reference, capture everything by value, or capture everything by mutable reference. And then you can enumerate exactly which things you want to capture as well if you want to constrain it more. That is my general feeling about it. But yeah. Adler says Andreas works in a closet. That's how he avoids getting distracted. That is true. It helps me a lot to sit in here because there's nothing interesting in here other than whatever I put on the screen. So as long as I'm disciplined about putting the right thing on the screen, then that's all that I see. Sam Bowman says, greetings. I'm leaving for Silicon Valley tomorrow to meet with my remote coworkers for a week. I've never been there before and wonder if there's anything you would recommend doing from your time there. What would I recommend in the Valley? I guess you can, if you have some time there and you have a rental car, you can drive to all the little towns and because it's just nice to get a mental image of like, well, what's Mountain View like? What's Sunnyvale? What's Cupertino? What's all the little towns? You can visit them all. Redwood City, and something that's kind of interesting in that area is how the towns kind of bleed into each other. Like it's you're just driving and suddenly you're in a different town and you didn't, if you were not paying attention, you wouldn't realize that you moved from Cupertino into Sunnyvale, because the towns are just like grinding up on each other. So that's something I would recommend, just because I enjoy having sort of an idea of how things are laid out and a visual memory of the different places. So when somebody says, oh, I'm in Mountain View at Google, then I can imagine, oh yeah, Mountain View, it's like that. But maybe you like totally different stuff. I don't know. I'm sure you'll figure out something to do. When I lived there, I was just going to work and going home most of the time. Didn't have a super active outside life, so I don't have a lot of great advice about it. JJ says, would you like Yukt to support doc comments? I don't have a strong opinion about that one way or the other. I guess we'll see if somebody makes a compelling case for how we can make nice documentation out of some kind of structured comment with a prototype. Then we can look at that. The literal definition of bruh says, I know you talked about this a little bit before, but any opinions on Gnome? What changes would you make to it? So I really like Gnome 2. I think Gnome 2 is just fantastically adequate software, and that's why I'm using Mate, which is the continuation of Gnome 2. I have tried using the later versions of Gnome, and I find them harder to use, or they take away productivity from me by making things harder to access, so I don't want to use them. What changes would I make to it? I guess I would just go back to the UI layout and behavior of Gnome 2, and maybe say like, okay, well, let's admit that Gnome 3 is clunkier and slower to use, and go back to something that was more efficient to use. But I'm not in charge of Gnome, so I'm grateful that thanks to the power of open source, I have options, and there's even people like continuing the development of Gnome 2. Let's see. Paul Gathago says, hello, Andreas. Quick one. How do I compile Yukt? Link to how-to documentation will suffice. I don't know if there is any how-to documentation. I think it's still too early for that to fully exist. But the way that you build it right now is you just go into the Yacht directory and you type Ninja. And yeah, I actually have it built already. So wait, Ninja clean? That's not a thing. Well, I can just clean everything and then I can Ninja. You just use Ninja, and then that's how you build the compiler. So Philip says, well, hello, friends. Better late than never. Absolutely. Welcome to the stream, Philip. Chihiro says, what do you think about such events like team buildings? Well, it's interesting. When I was younger, I hated team building. Everybody around me hated team building, and we never understood why we had to do it because it seemed like such silly nonsense. But as I get older, I've come to understand that it's actually helpful for team cohesion and for like camaraderie and morale to put people into lighthearted situations with their coworkers where they just get a little bit more comfortable with each other. And you know, if you've had a couple of lighthearted conversations with your coworkers, it's that much easier to speak with them at work about random stuff. And I don't know, I totally couldn't see that when I was younger, but now I recognize that team building helped me be more comfortable speaking to my coworkers. And I can definitely see that, like, after participating in those type of things, like, I felt more comfortable with my coworkers afterwards, and we would have more friendly conversations, more rapport, I guess, during normal work conversation as well. And it was ultimately a really good thing. So as much as my younger self cringes at the idea, I have to admit that I think team building is kind of a good idea in many situations, as long as you don't choose things that are completely obnoxious or make somebody really, really uncomfortable. Like, you want to pick really lighthearted things that anybody can participate in without pressure. That's what I think about that. Mati says, what kind of pizza do you like the most? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say Neapolitan pizza. This type of pizza, definitely my favorite type of pizza. I like this thing when they burn it in the oven for like 50 seconds and it comes out nice and crisp and just thin and excellent. It's very good stuff. Let's see. German WTB says, good thing you're not in charge of Gnome then, because I love it. It's different and I can work with both, but I like the simplicity of modern Gnome. Yeah, and that's good. It's excellent that you like it, and many people clearly do. And it's good that we have options. Although, I guess the one thing I would say is I think it would be cool if they had sort of the old behavior as an alternative, as an option in the new code base. But at the same time, I can see that they've moved on mentally from that desktop paradigm, so they don't want to maintain it. But yeah, I'm not in charge of Gnome, and my opinion on Gnome ultimately does not matter to anybody in the great scheme of things, and it shouldn't. Philip says, MSVC is really not a fan of our macros. Watching this is a nice little break from that porting work. Oh, so you are... Philip is, I think, trying to get the libweb building on WinRT. That does sound like a difficult thing to do. I don't know why you do the things you do, Philip, but I'm glad that you do. It's trying to get anything working on Windows that has been written with POSIX in mind is always an uphill climb for sure. And I'm still, I'm not sure that the maintenance burden of supporting Windows is ultimately something that we want to shoulder. But if somebody feels very strongly about it and they can, they can make something that is abstracted in such a way that it does not incur a huge maintenance burden on everybody else, then supporting something like Windows as a backend for our browser engine seems somewhat feasible, but we really we have to look at what it ends up like. Philip says, basically I'm re-implementing ACK, so this project won't really affect Serenity's codebase at all. Well, if that's the case, then then it's fine if you don't need to touch Serenity. Drizzt Doerden says, hey Andreas, looks like I'm late. Yes, you are, but there's still a couple of minutes. Sam Bowman says, thanks for the suggestions. I won't have my own rental car due to cost, but that won't stop me from staring at everything out the window. Yes, that is definitely something you should do. Like, don't stare at your phone when you are traveling, I guess I would say, unless you've traveled there many times. Take advantage of the fact that you're in a new place and let your brain get some new information, new locations, new inspirations. That is nice. Salander was saying, just poking my head in to say, hey, Sverige. Yeah, hey, Sverige, indeed. Let's see, Drizzt says, is there any plan for an LLVM implementation of Yucked? Oh, sorry, I know no plans for anything. You are right, there is no plan. But specifically about LLVM, I will say that we are using Clang right now as the backend, and we are spending a lot of time waiting for Clang and LLVM in particular, to compile our stuff. So I'm not super excited about an LLVM backend for Yucked because it's not super fun to wait for LLVM. I think if there's any other alternative backend, even if we have to make our own, I feel like that's something worth exploring. Although, I mean, for generating super optimized executables, obviously LLVM is very sophisticated, but for day-to-day debugging, rebuilding the same thing 100 times, we really should look for more options, I think. Woody Monk says, hi, while working on the alpha part of a WebP decoder, I had to do some Huffman tree decoding. Having quite a bit of trouble with dynamically allocated arrays coming from GC land. Any book tip for me? I don't really have a book tip because I don't know a lot of books about programming, but I would imagine that any C or C++ book could be helpful. If you just want to sort of learn the basics of dynamic allocation. But in Serenity, we still manage your allocations in such a way that they go into some kind of container object. It's very rare that you would do a manual malloc and free or manual new and delete in Serenity code. So some kind of C++ book. If you want to read some C++ book, let's see, C++ books 2022. See if I recognize any of these. I don't recognize any of these well enough to say that you should try them. So, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Let's see. Report unwanted crap. All right, thank you. And how do we get rid of this? That was quite the thing. I like how it like it shows here that it was deleted, but they still keep the URL on screen. That seems kind of counterproductive. Let's see. Martin says, this might have been asked already, but how exactly would inline C++ end up working once the compiler no longer generates C++ but assembly? So inline C++ is really just meant as a help thing to do like ugly glue hacks. It's not meant to be a permanent fixture of the language, but rather just something that we have as an escape hatch when we're trying to do anything to integrate with C++, but we can't do it in Yucked at the moment. And we always have that escape hatch of like, well, just put this literal C++ into the output. Once we get to the point where we are no longer interoping with C++ in the same way, then there will be no need for inline C++. So I think, yeah, it's like a temporary thing. That's at least how I think about it. Let's see. Philip says that he is replacing all of ACK, currently just stubbing it. The main goal is to just use stud provided equivalents. But the biggest problem right now is that Microsoft VC doesn't support the GCC statement expression extension, and I have no idea how to work around that. Ooh, my goodness, that sounds sucky. That definitely sounds a bit sucky, because we rely on the GCC statement expression extension quite a bit. So maybe you don't have to build with MSVC. Can you build with something else? Anyway, it is getting a bit late here, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up. So I think we will end it here. Thank you all very much for coming to office hours. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate all the questions, comments, super chats, folks joining the Golden Yak Herd program. And by the way, special note, quite some time ago, Pierce sent me the money to join this Yak Heritage Foundation, and they finally made its way to me. This little plush yak that you get as a thank you for joining the Yak Heritage thing. So thank you, Pierce, for hooking that up. And now I have a little plush yak by my computer. Let me also see if I can find the actual thing. Foundation, was that the name of it? World Heritage Yak Conservancy. I think this was it. No, that was not it. Great, now I can't find the thing. My goodness. Oh, it was this thing. Yeah, the WHYC. Pretty sure that was it. So shout outs to heritageyak.com, supporting yaks and yak shavers around the world. Anyways, thanks again, Piers. And if you end up working on SerenityOS this weekend, then please come by our Discord so that we can share in the fun, because programming is more fun when you do it together with friends. Other than that, have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye.